and they pay on the mortgage, which is like an acquisition of your house, there's an interest that's gained. And so people may not realize that their house that belongs to them prior to a marriage can get a community interest in it by the community borrowing money and paying off the mortgage.
Let's talk a little bit about that moolah for a second.
Moolah.
So if my husband and myself, we have a joint account, and our monies kind of get all commingled up in there, does it automatically become community property no matter where it came from?
Well, if you had separate money in your account, say you got an inheritance or a gift from someone, that's your separate property even if you're married.
Oh.
If you put it into a joint account, that even a lot of people think that, well, if it's in a joint account, it just becomes community.
It's 50-50, right.
But it always keeps its separateness to the extent that you can show that the money, how you can kind of trace it through the account. For instance, if you put $10,000 into that account, and that account never dips below $10,000, you can say that $10,000 is still my $10,000.
That's valuable information.
Yes, we are learning something today. Okay, for the guy out there that's my fiance, and I just don't have time to sit down and do that prenup. I really don't. Before we get married, can we do it after we get married and it being no different?
There's different standards. Before you're married to someone, you don't owe them what the state calls a fiduciary duty. Married people have a fiduciary duty to each other such that they neither can take unfair advantage of the other, and they have the obligation to treat the other with fairness.
Sure.
You don't have that obligation prior to marriage. If you do it after you're married, there are certain things about a premarital agreement that can be unfair before you're married, but can't be unfair afterwards.
If I were married for 10 years, let's say, do I automatically get spousal support?
There is a presumption that a marriage of 10 years is of long duration, but spousal support is something that is not an automatic. It depends on the needs of the parties. It depends on a person's ability to pay the support. 10 years is defined as a long-term marriage. So it all depends on the facts. It's not just automatic.
So don't get too tough there.
Speaking of tough, you probably need a pretty strong divorce attorney, right, to make things go.
If you want to win that divorce?
Well, that's a misconception that you don't win a divorce.
Okay.
You just get a divorce. Unlike any other lawsuit,
that's
there's
nice to know.
No winner, no loser.
Yeah, nobody likes to get divorced, and I want my husband to hear that. Never. Now, if we go to court and the judge is listening, will he hear my side, and will I get justice? Because I want to feel that too. So would I get justice?
Well, I don't believe you really get justice from a court. You get orders from a court. And our family law courts are in crisis. They are extremely crowded. You've got someone who gives you about 5 minutes that may or may not have had the opportunity to read paperwork and makes a decision about you and your family and knows nothing about you. So you expect that you get orders from a court, but don't put a lot of stock in justice from a court. Settlement is your best bet.
What about if my lawyer
likes?
What if my lawyer likes my husband's lawyer as we're divorcing, and or they have a certain amount of animosity? It's probably better if they don't like each other, right?
People may think that, but the family law bar is not that big of a bar, and to the extent that your attorney can work with your spouse's attorney, your attorney's fees will be less. There's more likelihood of a settlement. There is a less tension, and mainly you're probably going to spend less money because lawyers who know each other know that if they're both good lawyers, they know it, and they're much more likely to be able to work out a solution with your best interest in mind.
I know that we have a list that we've been thinking about, talking about some of the truths that go on. And one of them is divorce should be treated like a business decision. And why do you think it's like that?
Because it is a business decision. Once the relationship is over and it comes down to dividing up property and money and things like that, it's a business decision. You make your deal, you keep the emotions out of it to the extent that you can, you work together to protect your children as much as you can from the process.
And that's just so true. But kids have a right to have two parents, don't you think, and to be allowed to love both of them. And I think that's so hard when you see parents, if they're embroiled in a terrible, terrible, mean divorce. I mean, I've seen it in my family, and I think, why aren't they thinking about the kids?
Right, and that needs to be their foremost concern. And they need to understand that your children are the innocents in all of it, and how they are treated through all of it is going to be crucial to how they deal with relationships in their life.
But they also learn, how the end of an intimate relationship should be handled by observing how their parents handle the breakup, right?
That's right. And people should never forget that their children are learning that lesson.
And just by watching,
hard.
yeah.
So hard. Now, litigation is destructive, and it's costly and stressful, and should be avoided, don't you think?
Absolutely.
And
most people will settle. And that's the good thing. Some people need to go to court a couple of times and find out how awful that experience is until they get it, and then they get off of it and get things resolved.
If there was something that you could say to the listeners out there, to the families out there that are going through this, and why would they select you as an attorney? Why? Tell me why.
Well, it's very important that you have someone representing you, whether it be my firm or another firm, that really understands the specialization that family law is. It has its own courts. It has its own rules. The people who do family law have to know a lot about a lot of things. They got to know about real estate and estate planning and taxes and business and all of those sort of things. So you want somebody who specializes in what you need rather than a person who just kind of dabbles in a little bit of everything. So having an attorney who does just family law is really going to be in your best interest.
What are you going to see on the website?
Our website basically tells you a little bit about what you should expect in going through the process. There are pages that deal with child custody. Our office does really a full service of working with people who are self-represented, preparing paperwork, and everything that you need to know about the divorce process, and our services are all covered on our website.
Nola has a question for you.
Just about advice. With so many people that are breaking up now in the economic situation, they're still living together. What advice would you give them to help them get along until economically they can afford to get a divorce?
Well, they should treat each other the way they would like to be treated. They need to be mature adults and not, act like children. And if you really have emotional issues dealing with it, because it's like a death, it's a very difficult process.
I agree.
There are mental health professionals out there who specialize in helping people get through transitions like this.
Good answer.
And it could be depressing for people out there, especially with everything that's going on. It just adds to it. And, I just want to thank you very much for being with us here in the studio.
My pleasure.
Did a wonderful job with us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I loved it. And thank you. Nola thanks you as well.
You bet.